Elena Thompson made a choice she knew would destroy her. "I'm sorry, for my son." She left the note on top of the empty safe, her handwriting shaky, the ink still wet. $600,000, gone, stuffed into a cleaning supply bag that now sat heavy in her car trunk. 35 years old, single mother, maid to a billionaire, and a son with 72 hours left to live. But what Elena didn't know, as she drove away from that Chicago penthouse at 11:47 p.m., was that the man she'd just stolen from was watching her on camera, and his response would shock the entire city. But before we continue, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's get into the story. It was 6:15 in the morning when the hospital called. Elena was already awake in the South Side apartment she shared with Jamal. The place was cramped, just one bedroom, a bathroom with peeling linoleum, and a kitchen where the fridge hummed so loud she'd learned to sleep through it. The walls were paper thin. She could hear Mrs. Patterson next door arguing with her boyfriend again. Elena didn't mind. She was used to noise, used to chaos, used to surviving. What she wasn't used to was the voice on the other end of the phone. "Ms. Thompson, this is Dr. Patel from Northwestern Memorial. We need to discuss Jamal's treatment options." Elena's stomach dropped. Treatment options was hospital code for, "We're running out of time." She sat up in bed, pulling the thin blanket tighter around her shoulders. The apartment was cold. The heat had been spotty all winter, and the landlord kept promising to fix it. "What's wrong?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Dr. Patel sighed. The kind of sigh doctors give when they're about to deliver bad news they've delivered 100 times before. "The leukemia is progressing faster than we anticipated. We need to move forward with the bone marrow transplant within the next 2 weeks. But Ms. Thompson, I have to be honest with you. Without payment authorization from insurance or a significant deposit, we can't schedule the procedure." Elena closed her eyes. "How much?" "The full cost of the transplant, hospital stay, and post-operative care is approximately $580,000. Insurance has denied the claim again. They're calling it experimental treatment. $580,000. Elena made $19 an hour cleaning Marcus Hale's penthouse. She worked 60 hours a week, sometimes more. She'd been saving for 3 years. She had $11,000 in her bank account. It wasn't even close. "Dr. Patel, Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard, forced herself to keep going. "I'll figure something out. I just need a little more time." There was a long pause on the other end. "Miss Thompson, I'm not supposed to say this, but you don't have time. If we don't operate in the next 14 days, Jamal's chances drop to nearly zero." Nearly zero. The words hung in the air like smoke. "I understand," Elena whispered. "Thank you, doctor." She hung up before he could say anything else. For a long moment, Elena just sat there in the dark, staring at the wall. Down the hall, she could hear Jamal coughing. That wet, rattling cough that had started 6 months ago and never stopped. The cough that led to the diagnosis. The cough that was stealing her son piece by piece. She stood up, pulling on her robe, and walked quietly to his room. Jamal was asleep, or pretending to be. He did that sometimes now, pretended to sleep so she wouldn't worry. He was so small, 8 years old, and he barely looked 6. The chemo had taken his hair, his energy, his appetite, but not his smile. Somehow he still smiled. Elena knelt beside his bed and brushed her hand across his forehead. He was warm, too warm. "I'm gonna fix this, baby," she whispered. "I promise." It was a promise she had no idea how to keep. 3 hours later, Elena was standing in Marcus Hale's penthouse, 73 floors above Chicago, dusting a bookshelf that probably cost more than her entire year's salary. The place was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, marble countertops, art on the walls that she'd Googled once and found out was worth millions. Everything was white and glass and cold. Marcus Hale rarely spoke to her. He wasn't rude, just distant, like she was part of the furniture, a necessary function. She cleaned, he paid. That was the relationship. But today he wasn't home. Elena moved through the penthouse methodically. Living room, kitchen, office. She paused at the office door. Marcus's office was off limits. He'd made that clear when she was hired. But she'd been cleaning for him for 2 years now, and he'd started trusting her with more access. Last month he'd given her the code to get in so she could vacuum while he was traveling. She wasn't supposed to touch anything, just clean and leave. Elena pushed the door open. The office was sleek, minimalist. A massive desk, leather chair, and behind the desk, a painting that slid aside to reveal a wall safe. She had seen him open it once, but it wasn't on purpose. She was cleaning the hallway, and the door was a little bit open. She had watched him type in the code, 0 to 41 to 7. She didn't understand why she remembered it. She didn't know why her mind had stored it, like some random piece of information that didn't really matter. But now, standing in that office, staring at that safe, the number burned in her mind. 0 to 41 to 7. $580,000. 14 days, nearly zero. Elena's hands were shaking as she walked toward the safe. This was insane. This was career suicide. This was criminal. But Jamal was dying. She slid the painting aside. The safe was brushed steel, digital keypad glowing faintly. Her finger hovered over the first number. "What are you doing, Elena?" Her own voice. Quiet, rational, terrified. She thought about Jamal's cough, his smile, the way he still tried to make her feel better when he was the one in pain. She thought about Dr. Patel's voice. "You don't have time." She entered the code, 0 to 41 to 7. The safe beeped, clicked. The door swung open. Inside were stacks of cash, bound in neat bundles, hundreds, 50s, 20s. Elena stared at it. This was Marcus Hale's emergency fund. Money he probably forgot was even here. Money that wouldn't change his life at all. But it would save Jamal's. Her hands moved before her brain could stop them. She grabbed the cleaning supply bag she'd brought, emptied out the rags and spray bottles onto the floor, and started loading cash. 1 stack, 2, 10, 20. She didn't count or think, she just moved. When the bag was full, she stopped, stared at what was left, maybe 100,000 still in the safe. She closed the door, slid the painting back, and then she pulled out a notepad from her pocket and wrote 4 words in shaky handwriting. "I'm sorry, for my son." She left the note on Marcus's desk. Then she walked out of the penthouse, bag in hand, her heart pounding so hard she thought she might pass out. Would you have done the same thing? Comment below, because what happens next changes everything. Elena didn't go home. She drove straight to Northwestern Memorial Hospital, parked in the garage, and sat in her car for 20 minutes trying to stop shaking. The bag was in her trunk, $600,000 in stolen cash. She'd become a criminal in less than 5 minutes, but Jamal would live. That's all that mattered, right? She walked into the hospital at 2:47 p.m., asked for Dr. Patel, and waited in a sterile consultation room that smelled like disinfectant and fear. When he walked in, he looked surprised. "Miss Thompson, I wasn't expecting. I have the money." Dr. Patel blinked. "I'm sorry." Elena's voice was steady now, clear. She'd made her choice. There was no going back. "I have the money for Jamal's transplant. All of it. I can pay today." The doctor stared at her. "Miss Thompson, that's wonderful. How did you, does it matter?" Then a pause. "No," he said slowly. "No, I suppose it doesn't. Then let's schedule the surgery." Dr. Patel walked her down to the billing office. Elena handed over a duffel bag, one she'd transferred the cash into from the cleaning supplies bag in a gas station bathroom. The billing specialist, a middle-aged woman with reading glasses on a chain, opened the bag and froze. "Is this cash?" Elena said. 580,000, count it." The woman looked at Dr. Patel. He nodded. It took them some minutes to count it all. When they finished, the woman printed a receipt, slid it across the desk and said quietly, "Your son's surgery is scheduled for next Wednesday." Elena took the receipt. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. "Thank you." That night, Elena sat beside Jamal's hospital bed and told him the news. "Baby, they're gonna do the transplant. You're gonna get better." Jamal's eyes, tired but still bright, went wide. "Really? Really?" He smiled. That smile that had kept her going for 8 years. "How'd you do it, Mama?" Elena kissed his forehead. "I just found a way." But 73 floors above Chicago, in a pristine penthouse office, Marcus Hale was staring at his laptop screen. Security footage. Time-stamped 11:43 a.m. Elena Thompson, opening his safe, taking his money, leaving a note. He sat back in his chair, his jaw tight, his fingers drumming on the armrest. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then he picked up his phone and dialed. "This is Marcus Hale. I need to report a theft. The police came at 6 a.m. Elena was asleep in the chair beside Jamal's hospital bed when she heard the knock. Not on the door, on the window. She opened her eyes and saw 2 Chicago PD officers standing outside the room. One of them, a tall white man with a buzz cut, motioned for her to come out. Her blood went cold. She knew. She stood up slowly, glanced back at Jamal, still sleeping, oxygen tube taped to his nose, and stepped into the hallway. "Elena Thompson? Yes. You're under arrest for felony theft. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." The world tilted. "Wait, please, my son is—" "Ma'am, turn around." The handcuffs clicked around her wrists, cold metal, too tight. Down the hall, nurses stopped and stared. A doctor whispered something to an intern. A security guard looked away. Elena felt her knees buckle, but the officer held her upright. "Please," she whispered. "He just got scheduled for surgery. He needs me. Please." The second officer, a black woman with tired eyes, spoke quietly. "Is there someone we can call? Someone who can stay with him?" Elena's mind raced. Her mother was dead. Jamal's father had been gone since before he was born. She had a cousin in Atlanta, but they hadn't spoken in years. There's no one." The female officer exchanged a glance with her partner. Then she pulled out her phone. "I'll call child services. They'll send someone to stay with him until—" "No," Elena's voice cracked. "No, please, don't take him. He's sick. He's scared. Please." But they were already walking her toward the elevator. Behind her she heard Jamal's voice. Small, confused. "Mama?" Elena turned her head, tears streaming down her face. Jamal was standing in the doorway of his hospital room, one hand gripping his 4-pole, his eyes wide with fear. "Mama, where are they taking you?" "It's okay, baby, it's—" Her voice broke. "It's gonna be okay, I promise." The elevator doors closed, and the last thing she saw was her son's face, crumpling like paper. The interrogation room was exactly what you'd expect. Gray walls, metal table, 2 chairs, a mirror that wasn't really a mirror. Elena sat with her hands cuffed to the table, staring at nothing. The door opened. The detective who walked in was a white man in his 50s, balding, coffee-stained tie. He sat down across from her and opened a manila folder. "Ms. Thompson, I'm Detective Morris. Do you know why you're here?" Elena didn't answer. "We have you on camera, breaking into a safe, stealing $600,000 from Marcus Hale. You left a note. Signed it. This is pretty open and shut." Then silence stretched between them. Morris leaned forward. "Help me understand. You've worked for Mr. Hale for 2 years. No complaints, no issues. Why now? What changed?" Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "My son is dying." Morris blinked. "Your son? He has leukemia. He needed a transplant. I didn't have the money. Insurance denied the claim 3 times. Her voice broke. "I didn't know what else to do." Morris sat back, rubbing his face. "So you stole it?" "Yes. Do you understand that's a felony? You're looking at 10 to 15 years in prison." Elena finally looked up at him. Her eyes were red, but they weren't pleading anymore. They were just tired. "I understand, but my son gets to live, so it was worth it." Morris stared at her for a long moment. Then he stood up, walked to the door, and knocked twice. "We're done here." What Elena didn't know was that Marcus Hale was standing on the other side of that mirror, watching, listening. His arms were crossed, his jaw was tight, but his eyes weren't angry. Detective Morris stepped out into the hallway, closing the door behind him. "Mr. Hale, we've got her dead to rights, full confession, we can charge her today." Marcus didn't respond. Morris frowned. "Sir?" "Her son," Marcus said quietly. "How old?" Morris flipped through his notes. 8. Jamal Thompson, diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia 6 months ago. "And the transplant?" "Scheduled for next week. Paid in full with your money." Marcus turned away from the mirror, staring at the floor. Morris waited. Finally, Marcus spoke. When I was 14, my little sister got sick. Brain tumor. Stage 4. My parents were teachers. Good people, but they didn't have money. We tried everything. Fundraisers, GoFundMe, sold the house. He paused. She died 3 weeks before her 9th birthday. And the last thing she said to me was, "I'm sorry we couldn't afford to save me." Morris didn't say anything. Marcus looked up, his eyes hard. I built my company so that no one would ever have to say that again. So kids like my sister could get the care they need. And now you're telling me that a woman who works for me, who cleans my house, had to rob me to save her son? Sir, with all due respect, that doesn't change. Post her bail. Morris froze. What? You heard me. Post her bail, I'll cover it. Mr. Hale, she stole $600,000 from you. Marcus turned to face him fully. And I'm worth $3.2 billion. Detective, I didn't even notice the money was gone until I checked the safe for something else. Do you know what that means? Morris shook his head slowly. It means I have so much money that losing $600,000 is like you losing $20. It's nothing. But to her, it's everything. It's her son's life. Marcus walked toward the door. Post her bail. I'll send my lawyer to handle the paperwork. And tell her. He stopped. Tell her we need to talk. Elena was released 4 hours later. She walked out of the police station in the same clothes she'd been arrested in, blinking against the afternoon sun, completely disoriented. A black car was waiting at the curb. The driver's side door opened, and Marcus Hale stepped out. Elena froze. He walked toward her slowly, his hands in his pockets, his face unreadable. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Marcus said, "Get in the car." "Mr. Hale, Elena called out of, her voice filled with surprise. "Get in the car, Elena. It wasn't a request." They drove in silence for 10 minutes. Elena sat in the back seat, her hands folded in her lap, her heart pounding. Finally, Marcus spoke. "I could have you in prison for the next 15 years. You know that, right?" "Yes, sir," Elena responded. "I could take everything from you, your freedom, your son, your future." "I know," Elena said. "So why'd you do it?" Elena's voice was steady. "Because he's my son, and I'd rather go to prison knowing he's alive than stay free watching him die." Marcus was quiet. The car pulled up to Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Marcus turned to face her. "Here's what's going to happen. Your son is going to get his transplant. I'm covering the full cost, hospital stay, recovery, everything." Elena's eyes went wide. "Mr. Hale, I can't. I'm not done." His voice was firm. "You're going to work off the debt, but not as my maid. I'm offering you a job, community and diversity liaison for Hale Industries, salary, benefits, the works. Your job is to make sure no other employee, no other person, ever has to choose between their family and their integrity." Elena stared at him, her mouth open, unable to speak. "And one more thing." Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, handed it to her. "No charges. I'm not pressing charges." "But Elena," his eyes locked on hers, "don't ever lie to me again. If you need help, you ask. Understood?" Elena's hands were shaking as she took the envelope. "Why are you doing this?" Marcus looked away, his jaw tight. "Because someone should have done it for my sister." He opened the car door. "Now go be with your son. Comment right now, would you have forgiven her? Or is theft still theft? Because what Marcus did next, that's where this story gets really complicated. Jamal's surgery was a success. 12 hours in the operating room. 3 weeks in recovery. And then, for the first time in 6 months, his blood work came back clean. Elena cried so hard the nurses had to bring her water. But the real shock came 2 days later, when she showed up for her first day at Hale Industries. The office was on the 42nd floor of a downtown Chicago skyscraper. Glass walls, modern furniture. People in suits rushing past with tablets and coffee. Elena stood in the elevator, wearing a blazer she'd bought at Goodwill, feeling completely out of place. When the doors opened, a young white woman with a headset smiled at her. "Elena Thompson? Yes, great. Follow me, Mr. Hale is waiting." They walked through a maze of cubicles and conference rooms until they reached a corner office. Marcus was standing at the window, phone to his ear, looking out over the city. He glanced up when Elena walked in, held up one finger, 1 minute, and finished his call. "Elena, sit," he said. She sat. Marcus leaned against his desk, his arms crossed. "You start today. Your job is simple. I want you to find every single employee in this company who's struggling. Medical bills, childcare, student loans, whatever. And I want you to fix it." Elena blinked. "Fix it? We're launching a program. Employee Crisis Fund, anonymous applications, no questions asked. You're in charge." "Mr. Hale, I don't have experience with—" "You have the only experience that matters. You know what it's like to be desperate. That makes you more qualified than anyone else in this building." He handed her a folder. "You've got a team. Budget's $5 million to start. If you need more, ask." Elena stared at the folder. $5 million to help people like her. I don't know what to say. Marcus walked back to the window. "Then don't say anything. Just do the work." The first month was chaos. Elena had no idea what she was doing. She'd never managed a team, never handled a budget, never navigated corporate politics. But she learned fast. She hired 3 people, 2 social workers and a financial advisor, set up an online application system, started spreading the word. Within 2 weeks, they had over 200 applications, single moms who couldn't afford rent, dads working 2 jobs to pay medical bills, young employees drowning in student debt. Elena read every single application herself, and every time she approved funding, every time she got to call someone and say, "We're going to help you," she thought about that morning in Marcus's office. The safe, the cash, the note she'd stolen to save Jamal. Now she was saving others so they wouldn't have to steal. But the strangest part wasn't the job, it was Marcus. He started checking in on her, not in a boss way, in a person way. He'd stop by her office at the end of the day. "How's Jamal?" "Good. Strong. He's back in school part-time. That's good. Really good." He'd linger in the doorway, like he wanted to say more but didn't know how. Elena had been working at Hale Industries for 4 months when she got the email. Subject: Mandatory Board Review, Employee Crisis Fund. Her stomach dropped. She forwarded it to Marcus immediately. His response came back in seconds. "Don't worry, I've got this." But his tone in the next team meeting said otherwise. The board meeting was scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. Elena wasn't invited, but Marcus told her to stay close to her office. "If things go sideways, I might need you." "What do you mean sideways?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Just stay close." At 2:47 p.m., Elena's phone rang. "Marcus, get to conference room A." Now, she practically ran down the hallway. When she pushed open the door, the tension was thick enough to choke on. 12 board members sat around a glass table, most of them white, most of them are men. All of them were staring at Marcus like he'd just announced the company was bankrupt. At the head of the table was Richard Chen, lead investor, venture capitalist, the man who'd given Marcus his first $10 million 15 years ago. He did not look happy. Marcus gestured to an empty chair beside him. "Elena, sit." She sat. Richard leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Miss Thompson, we've been reviewing the financials for your program." "The Employee Crisis Fund," Elena said. "Right, the fund." Richard's tone dripped condescension. $5 million in 6 months, spread across 237 employees. Medical bills, rent, student loans, child care. Elena nodded. "Yes, sir, that's correct. And tell me, what's the ROI on that?" Elena blinked. "I'm sorry? Return on investment. What measurable value does this bring to Hale Industries?" Marcus cut in. "Richard, we've been over this." "No, Marcus, we haven't." Richard turned to the rest of the board. "Because every time I bring it up, you shut me down. So I'm asking Miss Thompson directly. What is the business case for giving away $5 million to employees who should be managing their own finances?" Elena felt heat rising in her chest. She looked at Marcus. He gave her a small nod. "Go ahead." Elena turned to Richard. "With all due respect, Mr. Chen, the business case is that your employees are human beings. And when human beings are drowning in debt, struggling to feed their kids, or choosing between rent and medicine, they don't perform well at work." Richard's eyebrow raised. "Is that so?" "Yes. In the 6 months since the fund launched, We've seen a 22% decrease in employee turnover. Sick days are down 18%. Productivity metrics across assisted employees are up 14%. She slid a folder across the table. I have the data right here. Every dollar we've spent has resulted in better retention, higher morale, and increased output. You want ROI? There it is. The room went silent. Richard opened the folder, scanned the pages. His expression didn't change. Finally, he closed it and looked at Marcus. This is a PR stunt. Marcus's voice went cold. Excuse me? You hired your former maid, who, let's not forget, stole from you, and put her in charge of a multi-million-dollar program to make yourself look good. This is vanity philanthropy, and it's going to sink this company. Elena's hands clenched under the table. Marcus stood up. Richard, I've known you for 15 years. You've made a lot of money off this company. So let me be very clear, this fund isn't going anywhere, and neither is Elena. Richard stood too. Then neither are we. What? Richard looked around the table. I've spoken with the other board members. We're calling for a vote of no confidence. Either you shut down this program and refocus on actual business strategy, or we remove you as CEO. The room erupted. 3 board members started talking at once. One woman, Jessica Park, CFO, shook her head. Richard, this is extreme. This is necessary, Richard snapped. Marcus has lost sight of what this company is supposed to be. We're not a charity. We're a tech firm. And if he can't see that, he shouldn't be leading it. Marcus's face was stone. You're serious. Dead serious. We vote Monday, 9 a.m. Richard grabbed his briefcase and walked out. Half the board followed him. Elena sat frozen in her chair as the room cleared. Jessica Park stayed behind. So did 2 other board members, both younger, both looking shaken. Marcus sank into his chair, rubbing his face. I'm sorry, Elena whispered. This is my fault. No, Marcus's voice was firm. This is theirs. They see employees as line items on a spreadsheet. You see them as people. That's the difference. Jessica leaned forward. Marcus, I hate to say this, but Richard has the votes. Chen Capital controls 38% of the board. If he swings 2 more members, you're out. Then we change their minds. How? Marcus looked at Elena. We show them what $5 million actually bought. Over the weekend, Elena worked harder than she'd ever worked in her life. She called every single employee who'd received help from the fund, asked them to write testimonials, to share their stories. By Sunday night, she had 63 responses. Single mothers who'd avoided eviction, fathers who'd kept their kids in daycare, young employees who'd finally paid off predatory student loans, and one that made Elena cry. A woman named Maria Gonzalez, warehouse worker. Her daughter had been diagnosed with a brain tumor. Insurance denied coverage. The fund paid for the surgery. Maria's email was 3 sentences long. My daughter is alive because of this program, because someone saw us as people, not numbers. Please don't let them take this away. Elena printed every single testimonial. All 63. Monday morning, 9 a.m. The board reconvened. This time the room was packed. Not just board members, employees, over 100 of them, standing in the back, lining the walls. Richard Chen looked furious. What is this? Marcus stood at the head of the table. This is the ROI you asked for. He nodded to Elena. She stood, holding the stack of printed emails. These are the voices of 63 employees whose lives were changed by the crisis fund. I'm going to read 3 of them, and then we're going to vote. Richard tried to interrupt. This is highly irregular. Let her speak, Jessica Park said firmly. Elena took a breath and began. She read Maria's email first. Her voice cracked on the last line. Then she read one from a man named David Chen, no relation to Richard, whose son had been in a car accident. The fund covered his medical bills when insurance capped out. He was back at work within 2 months, top performer in his department. Finally, she read one from a young woman named Keisha Roberts, 24, entry-level coder, drowning in student debt. The fund paid off $20,000. Keisha's email ended with, I was going to quit. I had an offer from Google for more money, but after what this company did for me, I'm staying. Not because I have to, because I want to. Elena set down the papers. You want ROI? Here it is. retention, loyalty, productivity, and something you can't put a price on. People who believe their company actually cares about them. She looked directly at Richard. You can vote Marcus out. You can shut down the fund, but you'll lose every single person in this room. And the ones who stay, they'll remember that you valued profit over people. Silence stretched between them. Richard's face was red. Then, from the back of the room, someone started clapping. It was Maria Gonzalez. Then David Chen joined in. Then Keisha. Within seconds, the entire room was applauding. Richard looked around, his jaw tight. Finally, he sat down. Fine, the fund stays. For now. Marcus nodded. Good. Now let's get back to work. After the meeting, Elena and Marcus stood alone in the hallway. You just saved my job, Marcus said quietly. Elena shook her head. No, you saved mine first. I just returned the favor. Marcus smiled. A real, genuine smile. We make a good team. Yeah, Elena said. We do. 6 months later, Jamal came to the office. He was 10 now, his hair grown back, color in his cheeks, energy that made the nurses laugh. Elena had been nervous about bringing him, but Marcus had insisted. I want to meet him. Jamal walked into Marcus's office holding Elena's hand, his eyes wide. Whoa, this place is huge. Marcus stood up, smiling. You must be Jamal. Yes, sir. Marcus walked around his desk and knelt down to Jamal's level. Your mom tells me you like to draw. Jamal nodded. Superheroes mostly. Yeah? Who's your favorite? Spider-Man. But I like making up my own too. Marcus glanced at Elena, then back at Jamal. Can I tell you a secret? Jamal's eyes went wide. Okay. Your mom? She's the bravest person I've ever met. You know why? Jamal shook his head. Because when the whole world told her no, she found a way to say yes. She fought for you when no one else would. That's a real superhero. Jamal looked up at Elena, beaming. I know. She's the best. Marcus stood, clearing his throat. So I was thinking, how would you like to come to the office sometimes after school? We've got a whole art room on the 3rd floor. You could draw, maybe design some characters for our new kids coding program. Jamal's mouth dropped open. Really? Really? He looked at Elena. Can I, Mama? Elena's eyes were wet. Yeah, baby, you can. That night, as they drove home, Jamal fell asleep in the back seat. Elena glanced at him in the rearview mirror, alive, healthy, safe. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Thank you for today, and for everything. She typed back. I should be thanking you. His response came immediately. No, you saved my life too. You just don't know it yet. Elena stared at the message. What did he mean? But before she could ask, another text came through. There's something I need to tell you. Something about my past. Can we talk tomorrow? Elena's heart skipped. Of course. She put the phone down, and as the city lights blurred past her window, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change again. The next morning, Marcus asked Elena to meet him at a coffee shop in Bronzeville, not downtown, not near the office. Bronzeville, the historic black neighborhood on Chicago's South Side. Elena arrived at 9 a.m. and found Marcus sitting in a corner booth, 2 cups of coffee already on the table. He looked different, tired, like he hadn't slept. Thanks for coming, he said. Elena slid into the booth. You said you needed to talk. Marcus nodded. He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup, staring down at it like he was trying to find the right words in the steam. Finally he spoke. I need to tell you something I've never told anyone at the company, something I've spent my entire adult life hiding. Elena waited. Marcus took a breath. I'm adopted. Elena blinked. That wasn't what she'd expected. My parents, the ones who raised me, they were white, teachers from Wisconsin, good people. They adopted me when I was 3 days old. He paused. My birth mother was black, 17 years old. She couldn't keep me, so she gave me up. The coffee shop noise, espresso machine hissing, people chatting, faded into background static. Elena stared at him. You're mixed, half black. Yeah. Marcus looked up at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked vulnerable. No one knows, not my investors, not my board, not even my ex-wife. I've spent 20 years in tech passing as white because that's the only way I could survive. Elena's voice was quiet. Why are you telling me this now? Marcus let out a bitter laugh. because you're the first person who made me feel ashamed of hiding. What? Elena, you risked everything for your son. You didn't hide. You didn't play it safe. You walked into my office, took what you needed, and left a note because even in your desperation, you had the courage to own who you were. He leaned forward. I've been playing it safe my whole life. Changing my name. Marcus Hale used to be Marcus Hale Y. Straightening my hair when I was younger. Never talking about where I came from. Because I was terrified that if people knew the truth, they'd see me differently. And would they? Elena asked. Probably. Silicon Valley isn't exactly known for its diversity. I've sat in rooms where investors made jokes about hiring quotas. Where people assumed I was one of the good ones because I looked white enough. His jaw tightened. And I let them. Because it was easier than fighting. Elena reached across the table and put her hand on his. Marcus, you don't owe me this. Yes, I do. Because when I saw you in that interrogation room, handcuffed to a table, willing to go to prison for Jamal, I saw what real courage looks like. And I realized I've been a coward my whole life. Silence stretched between them. Then Elena said, So what are you going to do? Marcus looked her in the eye. I'm going to stop hiding. And I'm going to use every dollar I have to make sure no other parent has to make the choice you made. 3 weeks later, Marcus called a press conference. The room was packed. Reporters from the Tribune, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, cameras everywhere. Elena stood in the back, her heart pounding. Marcus stepped up to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and began, Good morning. My name is Marcus Haley, not Hale. Haley. The room went silent. I changed my name 23 years ago when I started my first company. I changed it because I was afraid that investors wouldn't take me seriously, afraid that being a biracial kid from Milwaukee would make me less credible in a world that values a very specific kind of founder. Cameras flashed. For 2 decades, I've hidden who I am. I've passed as white. I've stayed silent when I should have spoken up. And I've profited from a system that gave me access because of how I looked, not because of what I could do. He paused. But 6 months ago, someone showed me what real courage looks like. Someone who had every reason to stay quiet, to blend in, to survive, and instead, she risked everything for the person she loved. Marcus looked directly at Elena. Her name is Elena Thompson. She works for me, and she's the reason I'm standing here today. Elena's breath caught. Marcus turned back to the crowd. Today, I'm announcing the launch of the Jamal Thompson Children's Healthcare Foundation. $1 billion. Dedicated to covering medical costs for families who can't afford life-saving treatment for their kids. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras clicked. People stood. But Marcus wasn't done. And I'm stepping down as CEO of Hale Industries. I'll remain on the board, but I'm transitioning to full-time work on the foundation. Because I've spent 20 years building wealth. Now I want to spend the next 20 years building something that actually matters. He stepped away from the podium, and as he walked off the stage, he caught Elena's eye and mouthed 2 words. Thank you. The foundation launched 6 months later. Elena was named Chief Operating Officer. Her job was simple. Find families like hers, help them, save lives. In the first year, they helped over 3,000 kids, leukemia patients, kids with cystic fibrosis, families bankrupted by medical bills. Every single one got full coverage, no questions asked. And every time Elena approved a case, she thought about that night in Marcus's office. The safe, the cash, the choice. She'd broken the law to save Jamal, and somehow it had saved Marcus too. 2 years after the press conference, the foundation held its first annual gala. The event was at the Four Seasons in downtown Chicago. Black tie, donors, politicians, celebrities. Elena walked in wearing a navy blue gown that Marcus had insisted on buying her. You're the face of this foundation, he'd said. You deserve to look the part. She felt like an imposter. But when she saw Jamal, now 12, healthy, wearing a little tuxedo, she remembered why she was here. Marcus found her near the silent auction tables. You look incredible. Elena smiled. You clean up pretty well yourself. He laughed. Speeches in 10 minutes. You ready? Me? I thought you were speaking. Marcus shook his head. This is your story, Elena. You should tell it. Her stomach dropped. Marcus, I can't. Yes, you can, and you will. 10 minutes later, Elena stood at a podium in front of 400 people. Her hands were shaking. The microphone felt too close. But then she saw Jamal in the front row giving her a thumbs up. And she began, 3 years ago, I was a maid. I worked 60 hours a week cleaning a billionaire's penthouse, and I still couldn't afford to save my son's life. The room was silent. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I stole $600,000, and I'd do it again. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. But here's what I learned. Desperation doesn't make you a criminal. It makes you human. And the system that forces parents to choose between their child's life and their freedom? That's the real crime. Applause started to build. The man who caught me, Marcus Haley, he could have destroyed me. But instead, he gave me a second chance. And together, we built something that gives second chances to families who don't have billionaires looking out for them. She looked at Marcus. This foundation isn't charity, it's justice. It's saying that every child, no matter their zip code, their parents' bank account, or the color of their skin, deserves to live. The room exploded in applause. Elena stepped away from the microphone, tears streaming down her face. Marcus met her at the edge of the stage and pulled her into a hug. "You just changed the world," he whispered. That night, after the gala, Elena and Marcus sat on the rooftop terrace of the hotel, looking out over the city. Jamal had fallen asleep in the car. The event staff was cleaning up below. It was just the two of them. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said. "Always. Do you ever regret it? Giving me that second chance?" Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You didn't just steal my money, Elena. You stole my excuse to stay comfortable. To keep hiding. To pretend that success was enough." He turned to face her. "You forced me to look at who I really was, and who I wanted to be. So no, I don't regret it. You saved my son's life, and you saved mine too." Elena wiped her eyes. "I never thought stealing money would lead to this." Marcus laughed. "Neither did I. But here we are." They sat in silence, watching the city lights. And for the first time in years, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. What would you have done in Marcus's position? Press charges or given a second chance? Comment below. Because this story isn't over yet. 5 years later, Jamal Thompson was 17 years old and a freshman at Northwestern University. Pre-med, full scholarship, cancer-free for 6 years. He still visited the foundation every summer, volunteering in the outreach department, talking to kids who were going through what he went through. Elena had written a book, The Price of Survival, One Mother's Fight Against a Broken System. It became a bestseller. She did interviews on NPR, Good Morning America podcasts. And every time someone asked her, "Do you regret stealing that money?" she gave the same answer, "I regret that I had to." Marcus stepped down from the foundation's board when he turned 50. He'd done what he set out to do. The foundation was sustainable, self-funded, helping over 10,000 families a year. But more than that, he'd stopped hiding. He spoke openly about his identity, wrote op-eds about race and privilege in Silicon Valley, became a mentor to young black founders. And when people asked him, "What made you change?" he always said the same thing. A woman who loved her son more than she feared the consequences. On a cold afternoon in November, Elena got a call from Marcus. "Can you meet me at the coffee shop, the one in Bronzeville?" "Sure. Everything okay?" "Yeah. Just, there's something I want to show you." When Elena arrived, Marcus was sitting in the same corner booth where he'd told her the truth 5 years ago. But this time, he wasn't alone. Sitting across from him was an older black woman, maybe 60, graying hair, kind eyes. Marcus stood when Elena walked in. "Elena, this is Sharon, my birth mother." Elena's breath caught. Sharon stood, extending her hand. "It's so nice to meet you. Marcus has told me so much about you." Elena shook her hand, still processing. I didn't know you two had reconnected." Marcus smiled. "We hadn't, not until last month. I hired a private investigator 2 years ago, but I was too scared to reach out. Then I thought about what you said at the gala, about second chances." Sharon's eyes glistened. "He showed up at my door 3 weeks ago. I almost didn't believe it was him." Marcus sat back down. Turns out she'd been looking for me too. For 30 years. Elena felt tears prickling her eyes. I gave him up because I thought it was the only way he'd have a good life, Sharon said quietly. I was 17. Broke. Scared. I thought a white family could give him everything I couldn't. She looked at Marcus. But seeing the man he's become, and knowing he's using his success to help people like me, I know he turned out exactly how he was supposed to. Marcus reached across the table and took his mother's hand. Then he reached out with his other hand and took Elena's. Family isn't just blood, he said. It's the people who show up when you need them most, who see you at your worst and still choose to believe in you. He looked at Elena. You gave me that, and I'll spend the rest of my life paying it forward. Later that night, Elena sat on her couch with Jamal, scrolling through messages on her phone. The foundation had just hit a milestone. 20,000 families helped, 20,000 kids who got to live. Jamal leaned his head on her shoulder. Mama? Yeah, baby? I've been thinking about my college essay, the one about overcoming adversity. Okay, I think I'm gonna write about you, about what you did for me. Elena's throat tightened. Jamal, you don't have to. I want to. Because you didn't just save my life. You taught me that love is stronger than fear, and that sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules. Elena wrapped her arm around him, pulling him close. You know I'd do it all over again, right? I know, Mama, I know. In the end, this story isn't about theft. It's not about billionaires or second chances or even forgiveness. It's about what happens when desperation meets compassion, when someone who has everything meets someone who has nothing, and when both of them realize that maybe, just maybe, they need each other more than they thought. Elena Thompson stole $600,000, and it changed 2 lives forever. But the question is, would you have done the same? If this story moved you, hit that like button. If you believe in second chances, drop a comment saying forgiven. If you think justice matters more than mercy, comment guilty. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, someone who's fighting for their family, struggling to survive, or just needs hope, share this video with them. Because stories like this remind us that humanity still exists, even in the darkest moments, especially in the darkest moments. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help. Or in Elena's case, take it.